Okay, yeah, let me just check to see that this is all coming through here. Should be okay. Let's see, is the volume on? Yes. Okay. All right, it does seem to be okay. Not very good volume. Let me just check what's happening here with this. I'll bring this a bit closer. Perhaps it'll be better. Right. Okay. All right. Let's hope that's right. All right. It seems to be good now. Okay. It looks good. Right. So, okay. So, Jack's story, chapter 25. Visiting the haberdashery store. Preparations for the play. Oops. Okay. Let me turn this off here. Okay. Right. Now, visiting the haberdashery store. Preparations for the play threatened to engulf all other activities at the school. Elaine and Mr. Kenworthy, the musical director, held auditions every afternoon. Kate was ecstatic when she landed the part of the narrator. Dan, who happened to have a magnificent singing voice, swore he would never take part in a play of any sort. After all, he was not a sissy. Elaine's cajoling would not budge him. She had to be content with Raymond Garcia, a boy from Mozambique, and a cheerful but indifferent singer. Grudgingly, Dan agreed to be his understudy. Once the actors and actresses had been chosen, a workshop for the cast was set up. We have a huge cast, so we must get cracking with practices, Mr. Porter, the production stage manager, said as he handed out schedules and checked that the members of the cast had the appropriate scripts. Committees had to be set up to deal with the many facets of the production. Elaine questioned her sanity in embarking on this project, but secretly she loved the excitement and that frenetic feeling of always working towards a deadline. Jack was in charge of the scenery under the woodwork teacher, Meneer Boerter. He chose a few of his friends from the woodworking class to help. The scenery was minimal. He needed to paint the backdrop and perhaps build Joseph's chariot. A tent for Jacob to sit under, but not much more. Adam volunteered to design and print the posters and programs. His father had agreed to let him use the facilities of the newspaper and the print shop, so Adam oversaw the marketing and publicity team dealing with the press coverage and the advertising. Slowly, as the parts were allocated, the students became familiar with the script and started to get the feel of what their character was supposed to do. Elaine was energetic and enthusiastic, and the cast picked up the atmosphere she created. Several of the mums, friends of Timothy's mother, who were talented seamstresses, volunteered to make Joseph's coat. This was a huge undertaking, and none of the sewing team knew where the material would come from. First, they put out a school-wide plea for brightly coloured material, and they collected a goodly amount. But after that, they stalled. The coat itself would take many meters of fabric. "We have to get more material," said Daphne, Timothy's mother, who had appointed herself liaison and chief seamstress. She had set up a little sewing room in one of the storerooms near the rugby field. I think you must go and ask Hamid's father. He owns the material and haberdashery shop in the Indian Quarter. Sorry. Elaine was intrigued, but she was not at all confident that she had only to ask and it would be given. She remembered an incident a couple of years earlier when she tried to get him to donate to a school fundraiser. Because his son was not allowed to go to the school, he had refused to assist. Elaine had agreed with him and felt embarrassed for her crass behaviour in requesting assistance in the first place. But nevertheless, it had been a humiliating and eye-opening experience. However, educational opportunities had changed since then, and she hoped the new political initiative would work in her favour. Steeling herself against possible rejection, she set off the following afternoon. She took Jack with her for support. The first person they saw, as she was looking around for suitable offcuts, was Hamid himself. "Oh, hello there," she greeted him. "So, is this how you spend your afternoons? I must say, this is one of my favourite shops in Barberton. I'd really like to talk to your father, though. Is he here?" Hamid looked uneasy. "Have I done something wrong?" he asked anxiously. She laughed. "No, of course not. It's nothing to do with the classroom." Just then, a large, imposing-looking man appeared, wearing a long white robe and a turban. "Is there a problem here?" he asked in a deep, powerful voice. "Not a problem, Papa," answered Hamid. "May I introduce my teacher, Miss Summerfield?" Elaine stepped forward and held out her hand. "Good afternoon," she said. Hamid's father stepped back. He raised his hands in a denying motion, horror on his face. A sweet voice broke into the charged atmosphere and explained, "So sorry, my dear, but Muslim men don't touch infidels. If such a thing was to happen, a ritual cleansing would have to take place." And Hamid's mother slipped into the space between the two of them. She turned her attention to Elaine. "We hope that Hamid is working well in your class. You take him for English, I believe." "Oh, yes. Hamid works very well. He's a model student. I couldn't ask for a better one." "Oh, that is so good to hear. How may we help you?" It took a long time to explain their needs. Hamid's father drifted off, and Elaine was not sure that he would cooperate. In the end, Hamid's mother said in her sweet sing-song voice that they would try and make a plan. Perhaps Elaine would leave the idea with them, and they would see what they could do. Chapter 26. Mrs. Shongwe at home. Outside the shop, Elaine turned to Jack. "Well, that was much harder than I thought. Let's hope they decide to help us, or we're doomed." "Couldn't you just hire a coat?" asked Jack. "That would be the easiest thing to do." "Well, we'll wait and see what they decide. Jack, seeing we're down this end of town, I was planning to visit Zachary's family. I'm still struggling to get Zachary to participate fully, although he is much more cooperative than he was. I thought I'd make a home visit and chat to his mum. Do you care to join me?" "Yes, of course," said Jack, giving his aunt a surprised look. "You're not thinking of going into Hemchindeen on your own, are you?" "Well, why ever not?" "Well, it's not something we do, is it?" Jack asked in surprise. "Come on, Jack. I call that yesterday's thinking. I believe I should always be able to visit the families of the students." "Agreed." Jack held up his hands, laughing. "What was I thinking?" They got into the car, turned out of the parking lot, and headed towards the township, Jack had never been in Engadine before. He was appalled at the state of the roads. His aunt seemed to know her way around and drove between the houses. There were no road signs, and after a while she stopped and asked a man who was walking along if he knew where the Shongwe house was. To Jack's amazement, he did, and he gave them directions to the newer part of the township, as he called it. Jack suddenly called out, "Auntie Elle, stop, stop!" Elaine drew up and asked, "What did you see?" "I swear I saw Innocent and his mother standing next to a shack a bit further back." Elaine turned the car around, and they searched for the Kahari family, but they could not find them. "Well, I must have been mistaken," Jack admitted. "Well, we seem to have arrived at Zachary's house after all," his aunt said. "What a lovely place." The dwellings they had passed had been a mixed bunch. Some were small shacks, and others were more imposing looking, like Zachary's house, with steps leading up to a veranda. Sitting on the veranda was a very wizened old lady in a rocker. She was wrapped up in several brightly coloured blankets and quilts, despite the heat. When she saw Elaine and Jack get out of the car and start walking towards her, she rang a little bell that was standing on the table next to her. Immediately, a large woman in a splendid green dress came out and spoke anxiously. "Hey, Gogo, what's the problem now?" Gogo pointed to Elaine and Jack, who were now at the bottom of the stairs. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Shongwe," Elaine said. "Do you remember me? You were such a tower of strength to me on the adventure camp. I am Elaine Summerfeld, Zachary's English teacher at Barberton Hua School." "Of course, Miss Summerfield." "Oh, please call me Elle." Come in, Mrs. Shongwe said. "I will make us some tea." "No, thank you," Elaine said. "I just popped in to ask about Zachary." "Tea first, then talk," Mrs. Shongwe insisted, motioning them to sit, and then disappearing through the door. They made a few attempts at conversation with Gogo, but ended up just sitting, smiling at each other in awkward silence. The tea, when it came, was not what Elaine was used to. It was poured out of the teapot, already mixed with condensed milk. It was accompanied by delicious biscuits. "I wonder," Elaine said conversationally, "if you have any neighbours who have moved into this area recently. My nephew and I were sure we saw someone we know on the end of the road." "People come and go all the time," Mrs. Shongwe said in a guarded tone. "We thought we saw a single mother and her son. They are Zimbabwean, and the last we knew of them they were living elsewhere." As soon as Elaine said Zimbabwean, Mrs. Shongwe's face changed. Her nose was pinched, and her eyes flamed. "Please don't talk to me about the Zimbabweans," she said. "They are not welcome here. They take our jobs and disrupt our economy." She was breathing hard. Elaine realized she had made a fatal error if she was hoping to get Mrs. Shongwe's support. "Isn't that a beautiful dress you're wearing? Green is such a striking colour." Elaine deflected the conversation. With masterly diplomacy, she managed to smooth over her gaffe and slip back into the role of attentive guest. Once the status quo was restored, Mrs. Shongwe was the perfect hostess. She talked about the health of poor Gogo, who sat all the time in silence, eyeing Elaine and Jack. The weather, the state of the roads after the recent rains, her opinion of the neighbours' dogs, her praises for Barberton Hua School, and particularly Meneer de Villiers. And finally, she drew breath and asked how Zachary was doing. He's such a good son, she told Elaine. His father is away a lot, busy in Barberton with his new liquor store, and Zachary looks out for all the family all the time. And not only that, but he's also a bit of a leader to the younger boys living around here, boys whose fathers are not present. I'm not sure where my son is at the moment. He's usually home by now. Elaine was taken aback. She was having a hard time squaring the sulky, disrespectful Zachary with the portrait of the upright young fellow Mrs. Shongwe knew and loved. Although she chided herself, he does seem to have changed his attitude recently. Well, I was hoping to talk to you about Zachary, Elaine said, putting her pretty china cap down on the saucer. I would appreciate it if he would support the play that we're putting on. I have him in mind for Jacob's eldest son, Reuben, the eldest of the children of Israel. I think he would attract other students to follow his example. As you say, he is a leader to many of the younger boys. The play? What play? Mrs. Shongwe asked. She looked mystified. Hasn't he told you about it? Elaine asked. I'm so sorry. I've also sent 3 notices home with the students informing you what we're planning. Ah, here he is right now, Mrs. Shongwe said, as Zachary came striding down the road. Jack looked up to see Zachary deep in conversation with a man wearing a military-style jacket and a beret. That's the man we saw him with at school, Jack thought to himself. Zachary and his companion let themselves in through the garden gate and strolled towards the group on the veranda. Here you are, my child. Mrs. Shongwe's voice had a caressing note to it. And good to see you, Filshi. She turned to Elaine and Jack and introduced her nephew, visiting for the last few weeks, she explained, and getting ready to return home to her sister. Jack stared at Filshi, laughing ruefully at himself, and nodded his head. So much for this guy being a sinister character. He's Zachary's cousin. We're going to miss Filshi, Miss Shongwe told her guests. He's been like a brother to my son, and so helpful, even to the extent of taking books that Zachary forgot to the school for him. And Zachary, you're just in time to hear some exciting news from your teacher. Zachary shot Elaine such a look she quailed. In that moment in the classroom last week, when Elaine so obviously accepted him for himself, his world was rocked, and the wall that was around his heart had started to crack. These feelings were new and raw, and he felt he needed time to process them. The presence of his teacher, in his home, visiting his mother, so openly, made it seem a little bit like coercion, as if she was forcing him into her camp. If looks could kill, Jack muttered, reeling from the information Mrs. Shongwe was giving them. Not a drug dealer after all, ha! Well, it would take more than Mrs. Shongwe's words to convince him and allay his suspicions all the same. But Jack was nothing if not fair-minded. It hit him like a hammer blow that his thoughts were unacceptable, and this was not the person he wanted to be. I'm like the people I despise. See my prejudices coming through. And I thought I was so cool. Jack came back to reality with a bang and realized that another ideological battle was taking place next to him. Yes, Elaine said, locking eyes with Zachary. I was just telling your mum that I've offered you the part of Reuben, the oldest of Jacob's sons, in the musical we're putting on, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I was going to tell you about it this evening, Zachary said, looking at his mother. Of course I would like to be Reuben. Thank you, that's wonderful, said Elaine. We've been allocating parts and need more players than we have now. It's a huge cast. And now we must be on our way. Thank you for a lovely and enlightening afternoon, and for the tea and biscuits. And it was great to meet you, Gogo." When they were in the car going home, Jack gave a long sigh. "That was almost diabolical, Auntie Elaine. The way you manipulated poor Zachary. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself." "There's a bit of a mystery. Why is Zachary two people? One at school and another at home?" "Oh well, no doubt we'll find out in time." "I think everyone is like that," Jack said. "One person at school and a different person at home." He was silent for a while, thinking about his mother and about the way he cared for her at home. It was a side of him that his friends did not know. Was he like that? One person at home and another person in society? Since learning about the way Grace Kahari had been evicted, he had closed his mind to any judgment of his mother's behavior. To consider the callous behavior on the part of his mother was beyond the scope of his imagination. What would be the use of confronting her? Sometimes, if you ignore a problem, it goes away, Jack thought. Leave her to her friends for support. He seldom had any discussions with his mother anymore. They lived under the same roof, but led separate lives. Quite often, when she'd been drinking all afternoon, Jack listened to long monologues from her about the unfairness of life. He was aware that Gideon van Jaarsveld still came round quite often, but although Jack did not like to admit it, he seemed to be a good friend to his mother and a good influence. Somehow he was able to curb her wild narcissism, and on a couple of occasions Jack had heard him suggest that it was time to stop drinking the wine that flowed so freely in the Summerfield house and transition to lemonade. Elaine shot a penetrating look at Jack, aware that he was processing some deep ideas, but she said nothing. "Life used to be so simple, Auntie Elle," Jack said. He dropped his head in his hands. "Nowadays I question everything and everyone." Back on the veranda of his house, Zachary stared after the two visitors, his face blank. Jack had a perfect life, Zachary thought to himself. He was clever, good-looking, and rich. All the things Zachary aspired to be, yet never felt that he would ever achieve. Jack was highly regarded by the headmaster, always the first to be chosen to represent the school or to take extra responsibilities. He hadn't needed luck to get himself a place on the rugby team, or the prefect body. Jack was the first pick for escorting the Standard Sixers on their field trip. Jack, Jack, Jack. How unfair it was the way everything always worked out to his advantage. Zachary punched his right fist into the palm of his left hand, frustration and envy growing inside of him. And his father, Zachary ground his teeth. Sad that he died, of course, but a shining light in the community. Zachary thought back to the accolades given to James Summerfeld at his funeral. And what about his, Zachary's father, the owner of a successful liquor store, but the talk of the town for being his own best customer? How often had his mother sent Zachary through the dark streets of Barberton to pick his father up off the floor of his shop, clean up the vomit he was lying in, and bring him back home. Zachary was stuck. He hated Jack, the golden boy. He just hated him. At the other end of the town, the golden boy was climbing out of his aunt's car. "Thank you for coming with me," Elaine said as she dropped him off. "Should I come in and see your mother, or is she still not receiving visitors?" Jack felt embarrassed. His mother had told him in no uncertain terms that she was not at home to Elaine. Perhaps next week, he mumbled. That's fine. Let me know if I can do anything to help. See you at school tomorrow. She drove off with a heavy heart, aware of Jack's torment, and knowing he had to figure out his own solutions. Jack opened the front door. What would he find today? He could tell the house was empty. His mother was out with friends more and more often. I'm so glad I have a boy, she would tell them. Then she would repeat the saying that she so often used to excuse her behaviour. Boys don't need looking after like girls. Jack is so self-sufficient. He didn't feel self-sufficient. He thought back to the afternoon he just spent and wondered what it would be like if his mother had just had a tea party with one of his teachers. If she had spread a cloth on the table and dispensed tea from a large, cheerful brown teapot, chatting inconsequentially about nothing in particular. If she had boasted to his teacher about what a good boy he was. If she even knew whether he was a good influence on the younger boys or not. The silence rang in his ears. The air seemed suddenly cold and unfriendly. Oh, hell, Jack said to himself. What's wrong with me? I must be hungry. I think I'll make myself a hot dog with lashings of mustard. That'll sort me out. He headed for the kitchen. All right. Well, that's it. That is it. Thank you very much for joining me for that. And I will see you again tomorrow.